Welcome to Dog on a Piano, the podcast where ordinary people give their personal perspective on life.
This episode, School's Out. Did you ever wonder if what you were learning you'd ever need in the real world? When was the Battle of Agincourt? The equation for the area of a sphere? The order of chemical elements on a periodic table? En parlez français? Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Does school just teach us facts, or does it quietly shape and form our worldview? The music you listen to, the books that spark your interest, that career path you chose. How much of who you are today was planted in those classrooms? Time to mark our guests' homework. Let's listen to their stories. Music and literature. What has left an impression on you?
Sounds of Blackness is a group that moved from doing religious music and then they just became mainstream. And they have one song in particular. It's called Going All the Way. And it pretty much goes, whatever it takes to make it, I'm going all the way. I may be down, I may be out, but I'm pretty much going all the way. I think it sums me up in so many ways. Where I've come from, the challenges and things that I have come across. At no point in time did I play the victim. I could have, I would have, it would have been easy to. But at no point in time did I play the victim. I always knew from a very early age that I needed to work twice as hard as the next person. I always knew that. And this song really just encapsulates all of that. To this day, it's a song on my playlist and I listen to that consistently because even now, it still resonates with me a lot in anything and everything I do.
I don't play a musical instrument. I wish I learned to play the piano. I do have a poem. It actually was a poem that my nan had up in her house. Although I am not a religious person, it's quite a religious poem, Footprints in the Sand, but it hit me different. It just showed that you're not walking alone. And although it might be referring to God in the poem, you can put that into all aspects of your life with friends, family. You told me when I decided to follow you, you would walk and talk with me all the way. But I'm aware that during the most troublesome times of my life, there was only one set of footprints. I just don't understand why, when I needed you the most, you leave me. He whispered, my precious child, I love you and I will never leave you. Never ever during your trials and testings. When you saw only one set of footprints, it was that I carried you. I was quite an angry child and felt like the whole world was against me when actually those sort of words, people are next to you and you don't realise how close they are and how they are supporting you. It's not until afterwards and you reflect on the situations that you realise actually you weren't alone, although you felt alone.
I can play the recorder badly. I did up to grade 5 on treble, descant and sopranino recorders. Yeah, that was my mum's great idea. Oh, I fucking hate recorders. I used to sing quite a lot. I enjoyed singing. My kids hate me singing. I like punk music, heavy metal, a bit of everything, to be honest. But recently I've been listening to an artist called Ren. And he's a Welsh guy. He's more of a rapper. He doesn't really fit into any of my usual boxes. One of the lyrics, it's a story about his fight for getting through really hard times, mental health, and his battle against psychosis. One of the best lyrics is when he stands up to his dark side and says, I'm the voice that you hear when you loosen the noose on the rope. It is a really inspirational way of looking at mental health and how he battles through and continues to persevere. I really admire him for that.
So this band I was introduced to by my boyfriend. When you first listen to it, you will be very unsure. However, their lyrics are just amazing. I think they're so candid on everyday life, and it's just somebody has sat down and just thought of a different, whole new perspective of how they view life, and I just think they're so deep and meaningful. So the lyric I've chosen from Crywank is, first love doesn't mean best love, and best friends doesn't mean best friends forever, but they both mean that at some point, somewhere, someone did care. I just think that's really sweet, and I think it's very relevant for me in my life because I've met a lot of different people And I've loved a lot of different people as well. Some people are meant to be in your life forever, and that's okay. That doesn't mean it's any less. It's just that's what they were there for.
I started learning piano and guitar at times, but life got in the way. My father was quoted poetry all the time. Funnily enough, now with my granddaughter, I think I'll come back to it a bit more. And some of those poems have got lovely rhythms. I think there's such hidden language in there, and there's such depth. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of way, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession so long as men can breathe or eye can see.
I played guitar for a long, long time, and I learned to play the guitar because I liked the Christian worship music. I then bought a ukulele, which I don't play, and I bought a piano about 2.5 years ago, which I'm struggling to get.
In answer to the question, what verse, song, poem is inspirational to me, I don't actually have something like that. What I can say is that from all the reading that I've done, the book that stands out to me is by author John Maxwell, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. He essentially says that everything rises or falls on leadership. Your ability to lead something will be the success or failure, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your work you do, whatever it is. And so if there is something that I live by, I would say, if you want to be successful at something, you've got to lead it well. And your leadership is governed by your leadership capability.
So I was obsessed with poetry when I was young. So I used to write a lot of poetry, very teenage angsty stuff. I think it gives you an outlet. I would pick a poem, which is Daffodils by William Wordsworth. And it was in a book of poetry I had when I was a child. My great nan used to love to listen to me recite it. So I did that as a 6-year-old. That's probably the poem that's been with me for most of my life. I think it's definitely just the link with my nan. The words themselves is beautiful. I think it's just because it's one of my first and most vivid memories, and also probably my first exposure to poetry. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high of vale and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze.
Which historical figures do you admire and why?
I think Thatcher for me, first woman in male-dominated government, and the one thing she always said is the lady is not for turning, and she never was. Thatcher, for everything that she did, rightly or wrongly, and I know people will have their opinions about Thatcher, but if you look at her as a strong individual, not even woman or man, but strong individual who stood for what she believed in and did what she thought and believed was right, and executed it right to the end, regardless of how popular or unpopular it was. For me, that's what I draw some of my strength from. If I just spin the tables just a little bit, being a Black man who is in Europe, I work in a very white-dominated industry, whereby in most instances, when I go to meetings, people have this idea in their head of what I look like, but it's when I turn up that you do see the reaction in people's faces. I have had to start to prove myself, and this has never ever stopped, and this will continue. But as the next generations come in, I do hope that this will change, and it is changing, which is good. I take that and that experience that I have had and continue to have, and then bring Maggie Thatcher back into the equation. That was exactly what she went through at that point in time. I think for her, the glass ceiling was there. She smashed through it and more to show the next generation, regardless of sex, color, creed, whatever you want to do, whatever you intend to do or you think of or aim to do, it's possible. You just have to want it. And you just have to want it more than the next person. And that's what I get from Thatcher.
Amanda Nugent, she studied at Harvard and she's just been constantly pushing to be the first Vietnamese woman in space. And she's kept her feminine energy as well, because I think that a lot of women in STEM subjects, such as science, they feel like to be professional, you need to present in a manly way. She still keeps her long hair. She still has nice makeup. Even flying to space, she doesn't feel like she has to be stripped down. She can present how she wants and she should still be respected. However, the turning point for her, where I really respect her the most, is she was derailed from her astronaut dreams because she was actually unfortunately raped. And then she spent 10 years pausing her NASA space flight mission, fighting her way for women's rights and rape survivors' rights, because she had evidence and yet no one was prosecuted. And so I think she just rewrote this legislation. It was passed unanimously. She fought for 10 years to get that passed. And she had all of these letters written from survivors just saying how much that she's helped them and inspired them to come forward and to get justice. And then after that 10 years, she went back and she made it to space. She's just done so much with her career, and she's been brave enough to pause her dreams for the rights of other people as well. I just think it's the most amazing story.
I think I should go for Elizabeth I, because I feel that she had quite a challenging job and she was very steely for her time, and she was equally very wise in as much as she could play people. So she used the femininity to play the guys who were all around her, and was able to manipulate. And we often think manipulation is something that's bad, but I think she knew what she wanted. She was a leader and stuck to her guns. And I think in the times that she was born, it was quite a delicate balancing act, because there was all the conflicts with the church, and yet she was able to step up and command and create an era that has stood the test of time with lessons learnt.
I was introduced to the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare by reading the book. Recently, there's been a film. Now, the film is not the book. The film is like one chapter of the book. It totally misses the entire madness of how SOE 18 and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare was founded and how it worked, and how Colin Gubbins and the whole crew made so many things happen. They created so many different gadgets. It's where we get the word Gubbins from. Came up with so many ingenious, crazy, mad things that were so effective. Those characters, those people, whether it's Lars Anderson, one of the commandos, all the way through to Fairbairn Sykes, who taught the knife craft and how to be a murderous bastard. They are some of the people that actually really made a massive difference in World War II that you may never have even heard of. Really fascinating and really interesting read.
I'd say Roald Dahl, more because I have a personal interest in the author, knowing that there are places near to where I live.
History.
I'm not a big historian. I appreciate history and I absolutely love the Eiffel Tower. It's only supposed to be there a very short amount of time, and yet this incredible structure was the tallest, after the pyramids, was the tallest structure until I think the Empire State Building or something like that. I was so impressed with that structure that I bought a book on it. That's the sort of thing that amazes me. And I suppose we've got this thing where we think we're better now because we're in the future and we've got more technological advancements. But actually, when you look back at some of the way things were done, the way bridges were built, it's amazing to look back and see what they were able to do 150 years ago. All the London Underground, Brunel, all the engineering, that's what really gets me. It's amazing.
I was very interested in World War II growing up. until one day I went home to my gran and said, "Oh, we're learning about Hitler. It's fascinating." And she said, "No, it's not fascinating. That was our life." And I was like, "Okay, I'm not interested in this anymore." I had a teacher when I was in secondary school who was amazing, and he really brought history to life. And I remember one day sitting in a classroom, and he came in and we were talking about the Black Plague, and he had all these tennis balls like hidden under his clothes to make it look like he had these bubons to get a bubonic plague. I have these amazing memories of him, and then he left, and my interest in history left with him.
Drama. I loved drama at school. I absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite things. I was involved in a couple of the school musicals, making a tit of myself on stage. I am an absolute ham. And now in my adult life, as one of my many hobbies, I do live action role play. It is like battle reenactment to some extent. I take on a character and I play that character out as I see fit. And I'm not shy about standing up, making an idiot of myself and waving my arms around or making a speech. I can do it scripted, but I prefer to do it off the cuff. I think I've always been a little bit leaning towards the exhibitionist type side of things and just standing up and going, yeah, I'll do it.
I absolutely hated drama at school. I viewed it as extremely cringy. I think just because it pushed me out of my comfort zone extremely. And the people that tended to like drama were very in your face about it. Obviously, it's very competitive. Everyone's fighting for the lead role. If you couldn't sing particularly well, if you couldn't act particularly well, there was a sniggering that would flow across the classroom. It wasn't a very encouraging atmosphere. So that really put me off. However, I will say that I did debate club, which is speaking publicly, similar to drama. You're arguing a point, you're putting yourself out there. And I really enjoyed that. That's kind of just stuck with me and made me more confident today.
Geography. Share your experience of travel.
I am not as well travelled as I would like to be. Best place, Barcelona. Worst place, Barcelona. First time I went, I had an absolute whale of a time. I went on a school trip and it was amazing. We saw all of the Gaudi architecture. We experienced so much stuff. I loved every minute of it. It was culture everywhere and it was brilliant. The second time I went to Barcelona was for my 10th wedding anniversary and absolutely everything went wrong. There was a crash on the M62. So we were stationary for 3 hours and missed the flight. We were stuck at the airport for 4 hours. I was told there was another flight to Barcelona. We got that flight. And then when we landed, we realized it was Barcelona-Roubaix, which is about 100 kilometers from Barcelona. So at 10 o'clock at night, I'm then having to get a train into Barcelona. We got there at 4 o'clock in the morning. The next day, I was punched in the bollocks and had my wallet stolen. The day after that, I got totally sunburnt from head to toe. It's the best place in the world when it goes well. It was an absolute nightmare when it went wrong. Great place, awful place. Loved it, hated it.
So my best and worst place is going to be Johannesburg. My perception of Johannesburg before I went there was already a negative perception. Johannesburg city centre was quite an eye-opening experience. And when you are in that environment, you can't help but think of those negative thoughts and stories that you've heard. Being there and seeing the difference of the scale of poverty, it did make you in some areas feel a little bit unsafe. But then I've also been to other areas of Johannesburg, which I've absolutely loved. My children were born there, so I definitely have a connection. I did actually enjoy living there. It was a different environment to the UK. It was sunnier skies, happier people. I met some very good people there. It showed me a bit of culture, I would say, with the job that I was working with. He was a builder for high-end residential properties, and he showed me a side of Johannesburg that I wouldn't have had the normal opportunity to do if I didn't work for the company.
So for me, I think Romania, what I experienced there was just shocking beyond measure. It really is a very good example of how and why people need to travel. Just because someone looks, thinks differently from you does not make them a bad person or doesn't make them better or worse than you at all. Best place, I think Italy. I love Italy. Italians are amazing. There's a bit of an African way of life as well with the Italians family. They're very family focused, very social people. There's a community thing and community feel about Italians, especially in the smaller towns as well. I love Italy. Great food, great people, great scenery. Love it.
Hands down, best place. Goat Island in Greece. It's this little secluded island off the edge of the mainland, and it's got this big sandbank linking it from the mainland to the island, which has about waist height water, and you can stroll over there. And the whole island is inhabited by goats only. So there's no humans on there. You can only visit for a small amount of time, and then you have to leave, and all the goats just roam around. It's a paradise how there's caves and there's crystal clear waters and coral, and then there's just goats everywhere. It's just the most surreal place I've ever been to. The worst place that I've been to is Barmouth in Wales. It's probably the situation and the mood that I was in when we visited. We just had a nightmare holiday, and we thought that we'd extend it and try and turn it around and end on a good note. We pull up in Barmouth. We're staying in this tiny little Airbnb, and the woman who runs it is crazy psycho. The room is really dirty. The street is just full of rubbish. It's grey outside. The weather's horrendous. And if you've been to a UK kind of beach setting and it's horrendous weather, it's just the worst place to be.
Oh, goodness. The smells are quite a big, powerful point for me, but the River Rhine was one of them. And seeing the Rhine at a place called Schaffhausen, which is where the Rhine falls. But the impact of that river, the density of it, and its spray and its noise was quite impactful when you went there. And I guess the other one would be on safari in South Africa in Kruger National Park. There's a rhinoceros, and actually it literally charging, and then they go pretty fast. And I'm going to my friend who's driving, so I think we should move on. No, it's fine. And it's things charging. There's that moment of excitement at seeing something vast in its natural state, in its natural place.
Best places I visited? The Bahamas was pretty neat. Beautiful weather, beautiful blue skies and blue waters, peaceful. Worst place I visited? Guatemala. I visited there to support someone that was doing work with street children. We were there for compassionate reasons, and I'll never forget the smell. I hope it doesn't sound unkind, but the smell of homelessness and the smell of they sniff glue to take away the hunger that they're experiencing, and it was heartbreaking. And we visited this dump where they were picking through the dump to find things of value, and the smell was almost overwhelming. So it's not that Guatemala's the worst place, but visiting this dump in Guatemala and seeing the poverty was awful.
I did go to Croatia last year, and it was a really amazing holiday. There's lots of fresh seafood because we're close to the sea. Croatia is basically all on the coastline. So loads of fresh seafood, which reminds me of being in Cornwall, and fresh pasta, like really nicely made pasta, because there's a lot of Italian influence.
Languages.
You know what? 7 years in Luxembourg, being married to a French woman and having 2 boys who speak French. They're very fluent in French. I don't speak French. I am lazy. I think I just took the typical Brit approach to everything. As long as you just walk into a room and you're like Del Boy and just put on your French accent, everyone will understand, right? I'm actually learning. I took level 1 French classes 4 years ago. But because everything I do is in English, I work in English, I engage in English, it disappeared. I understand French now more than I did before. So my boys can never talk about me anymore. They used to, now they don't, because they know I understand. When I speak French, I confuse myself because I translate everything upstairs before I even say anything. My goal for next year is to learn French.
The world is such a big place. So I think Mandarin would be like an awesome base to just see a complete different side of the world that no one's used to, or it's not commonly spoke about.
Language. I would love to speak French. When I was younger, I hated learning at school because I guess the way they taught it, or the inspiration was lacking. I've worked at so many places now, probably 3 or 4 companies where speaking French would be massively advantageous and be a feather in my cap. And yet I don't. I suppose I wish I'd tried a bit harder.
I'd say the language that I'd want to speak is Spanish because it's so widely spoken. It sounds really sexy coming off the tongue. It would just be so useful. You could be a translator, communicate with so many people that you would never be able to speak to before. And to be able to speak to somebody in their first language is so different to their second language. You break that barrier. You can just get closer with that person. You can understand the humor better.
Russian, because I love Putin. He is my favorite.
The first language that comes up in my head is Persian, obviously Iranian now. Why? I have no idea, but I think it goes from right to left. And I always want staff at the end of the book to come forward.
I don't speak any other language fluently. I would really like to be able to speak French because every year I go skiing in France and meet lots of people who I rely on to speak English to me for most of the time, apart from a few polite sentences. So it would really be nice. But I have been in a semi-abusive relationship with Duolingo for I don't know how long. And that owl is really passive aggressive and he does not bring out the best in me. And when I do learn anything, it bears no resemblance to the French I hear from French people.
What subject is your passion?
I love architecture. I'm the building geek. Civil engineering has always been my thing. I love buildings. My dream still is to build an offshore oil rig. I still hold on to it. Offshore oil rig is technically difficult. I think it's one of the most difficult things to do. Beautiful to look at, appreciate the design. And under the water is where the beauty of the whole thing comes in. It just shows you what the human brain can do and what humanity can do if we just set our sights to doing something. That was the dream. And I think that's what I get from engineering and architecture.
I'm not a very easily inspired person, which I don't know what it says about me, but I love doing all arts, like anything creative. I wish I had more time and space to do that sort of thing. I really enjoy, just being a bit free and giving things a go.
Art is amazing. I do love art. I paint miniatures. I paint figures, always have painted them for years. Everything from Warhammer all the way through to busts and figurines, but also on a massive comic book nut. They can be some of the most adult and intriguing ways of telling stories. So people like Alex Ross, who painted the cover to Kingdom Come for Superman and the Justice League, absolutely fantastic modern painter, paints like fresco style superhero stuff. And then you've got fantasy stuff like Paul Bonner, who inspired some of the early Warhammer stuff. He creates some utterly amazing pieces that are just totally mind-blowing. There are so many talented people that to appreciate them all is just a wonderful part of life.
My favorite painting is one done by Simon Kenny. He is actually a US artist. I was walking into this art gallery in my local area and it really struck me. It's a circle canvas, which is really unusual and you don't really see very often. Also, just to describe how it looks, it reminds me of a galaxy or deep under the ocean, where the light's kind of refracting through the waves, or like a galaxy solar system with the bright colors and the different strings and contours. The main two colors are pink and blue, and they're done in sections all mixed together with a focal point in the middle. It's just so stunning. I just get lost in it. It's such an interesting piece because the more you look at it, the more you notice about it and the more you like it.
I loved being able to create things with my hand, and CDT, craft design technology, gave me the pathway to be able to create stuff. And so even in the work I do now, I still like solving problems and creative solutions to things. And so I suppose the CDT was that gateway to that type of experience.
I love the Impressionists. I love all sorts of art. Van Gogh, I love the history and his story. His paintings, the simplicity of them, they say so much more than what you're seeing. I think it's an expression of where people are at in any one moment in time.
Mathematics.
I use a reasonable amount of maths for my job, but not algebra. No, I hated maths. I used to spend it singing Rocky Horror picture show lyrics to my friends. So my problem with maths is they would say, okay, and now you take this figure from this figure. And I'd say, but why? And they would say, because that's what you do. And that's not how I learn. So unless I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, I either have a sort of rebellious reaction to it and refuse to do it, or it just won't stick. I just don't have the level of understanding. So maybe if I'd had a more advanced level of maths, then maybe I could have gone back to the beginning of mathematical theory and it all would have made some sense to me, but I really didn't like it.
I hated maths at school, hated it, didn't pay much attention because for me, I just did not see the purpose, the use for it. I also did woodwork and it was called technical drawing at the time. Knowing how to calculate an angle or knowing the different types of triangles and so on. That's how I could take maths and relate it to that because I could see there was a need for it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was good at that. I knew my triangles, I knew my shapes, I knew how to calculate their areas and all of that stuff. But really, maths as a whole, didn't get it, hated it. I failed maths in my GCSEs. And because I wanted to do engineering, I had to have maths. So I reached out to my teacher, who I got on with. She always said to me, you'll be good at this. You're just lazy. You don't want to listen. She said, I hope the day will come when you will appreciate the importance of maths because that's when you realize how easy it is. And I just thought, fuck off. You don't know what you're on about. And then I failed maths. And I reached out to uni and they told me, without the maths, you're not going to get in. And I thought, oh, shit. So anyway, I went back to her and she said, oh, so the time has come. I said, yeah, unfortunately, the time has come. All she needed to do was to just explain and just bring it to life. That's all she needed to do. She brought maths to life for me. I passed my GCSE maths. I passed my A-level maths. I went to uni. I then did the engineering. But I just look back and I think, had I paid attention, I wouldn't have lost a year of my life. And I think that's one of the learns for me as well in respect to opportunities that you need to realize I have an opportunity here. And you just need to make the most of it and just grab it with both hands. You need to be good at the things you hate doing. That's what I needed to do. I hated maths. But the minute I put my head down, I did it. And it was understandable. It was easy. And I actually looked back and thought, what was the fuss about?
Working in finance, I will say, other than the basics of maths, times, division, add and subtract, I feel like I've not taken anything away from maths. Like I've never used Pythagoras' theorem. I don't work with algebra. What I wish that I studied more on was mental arithmetics. I wish I paid a bit more attention to that and focused a little bit more. I find as I'm getting older, I've become lazier and relied a lot on a calculator.
I didn't succeed at my maths degree. I came out with a certificate in higher maths and stats, which basically is below a third, which is thanks for coming. Now, what I really wish that I had done, statistics and game theory. Statistics is the most interesting part of maths to me, especially when you bring psychology into it, which is game theory, and how people interpret numbers and why people's perception of numbers is fundamentally flawed, and how when you look at the actual physical data behind maths and how statistics and mathematics work, it's quite counterintuitive to people. People make poor decisions based on what they think is good maths, and it isn't. There's a very famous problem called the Monty Hall problem. I find really interesting because it means that if I can understand the psychology of maths, I can play you. I can make you do things that are not in your best interest or in my best interest. It's how you manipulate data and how you look at statistics and why people misinterpret things.
People say, when am I ever going to use maths again in real life? Use it every single day. to real life situations such as like your taxes or your mortgage or the economy. My current job at the minute, I'm in sales and I'm constantly having to work out percentages of the products, work out Excel and charts and read all the information. I wish I'd paid more attention in maths, because when you apply it to real life, you can do crazy things with it, like architecture and physics, and it helps build on these ideas and prove them. So I just think it's really valuable.
I look at maths in two sort of ways. I look at maths as pure maths, which is maths for no reason at all, but just to be excited by maths. And then I look at maths as using it for intelligent reasons. I use maths actually at work for my continuous improvement work when we figure out percentages and ratios, but I don't see it as maths. I see it as a tool that I can use for figuring something out. I wish I'd been a bit more capable with maths and enjoyed it a bit more.
The biggest change for me in maths was when we had to do lots of practical stuff. It was creating a simplicity. We'd all learned the theories and all the rest of it, but actually the practicalities hadn't been so explained. So have I used math? I suppose I used tables an awful lot, counting and adding up in your head and totting up when you bought something, how much have you spent? In terms of cooking, in terms of calculating roughly how much something might cost, how much you're spending. So I've got basic.
What scientific developments excite you?
For me, AI, and I look at it from my typical banking days where almost everything we did was spreadsheets, to now where AI makes me look good. It has made my life easy. I'm absolutely shocking when it comes to presentations. All I need to do is just put my ideas on the screen. This is what I want to do. And bang, it's there within seconds. But then I still need to take the time to look at it, tweak it, and so on. But I'm not creative at all. I struggle to put my ideas or creative thoughts on paper. But when it comes to writing a paper or policy or procedure, I can just do that very quickly. So for me, AI is an enabler and made my life 100 times easier than it would have been if I didn't have it.
The area of science that I love is not necessarily how they've done it, but what consequences does that have? So there's a US company named Colossal Biosciences, and they have just genetically engineered wolf pups, and they claim resemblance the extinct dire wolf, which vanished around 13,000 years ago. I just think that's so crazy. And in this case, I just think it brings up such a big debate about whether we should be doing that. If you bring a species from that time frame into the modern day, it could bring up diseases that died ages ago that could be fatal to humans that we have no idea about. It's scary. Like, we're acting like we're gods when we're not at all. And just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it. And I think that's a line that humans step over a lot.
I've got a resin 3D printer. Whether you class that as science or more technology, being able to make anything with an STL file, just stick it in your printer and off it goes. It's a really cool development. It allows me as a model maker to be able to just make whatever I want. I can find a file, I can download it, I can print a copy for myself. It allows people to design prototypes, make prototypes, test prototypes. Now, the printer I've got prints in resin, but you can print in metal, you can print in chocolate, you can print in food, you can print in concrete. Have you seen where people print houses? That's amazing.
I just love learning more about the universe. I watch a lot of Brian Cox. Finding out about the universe actually enables us to find out more about our world here. We did have politics. We were made very aware of what was happening. Yes, I think it was probably to understand the system, because I did actually British Constitution as A-levels. And it did help me when I did my petition to Parliament recently for HS2, so to go into Parliament and be, it's quite a small Parliament, isn't it? One of the best things I ever did was go into Downing Street, into the places that you just can't go. The back of England, the crypt. I did bump into the King at the top of St James's Palace at the top of the staircase. So that's my claim to fame. We literally bumped nose to nose.
Although it scares me, I do enjoy the advancements coming along with AI. I think it's brilliant. I enjoy any advancements with transport and technology, whether it's battery or hydrogen operated cars or 0 point energy. I love all that kind of stuff.
Sport.
Always very willing to participate and try anything. So I've done like a big range of sports, from racket sports like tennis and paddle to physical ones like rugby. And I've done gymnastics, which includes a lot of flexibility, trampolining. I've thoroughly enjoyed every single one of them, even if I've not been good at it. I just absolutely love playing it. I love the sense of being in a team, of competing, of learning new skills. And I just think it's a really fun way to stay healthy and fit as well. I cannot get behind watching sport. Like, I don't get it at all. All of the things that I enjoy about sport are taken away when you put it on a TV screen. The adrenaline's gone, the endorphins are gone, the physical benefits have gone. I guess maybe getting connected with your friends watching, but for me, all of the positives of sport are taken away and removed as soon as you put it on a TV screen.
I'm terrible at sport. I enjoy playing badminton, but I'm not very good at it. I was far too aggressive as a child, so they wouldn't let me play netball because I didn't play by the rules. And generally, I'm very uncoordinated and have very little physical aptitude for anything, except when I started skiing in my late 20s or early 30s. Skiing is what I pin all of my sporting ability to.
Love sport, absolutely love sport. Grew up playing basketball and rugby. When I moved to the UK, I had to give up basketball because not a lot of people like basketball in the UK. But rugby, I kept up with the rugby. I was a loose forward, so I was the eighth man or flanker. Those were the two positions that I played. I used to be fast in my day. I stopped playing rugby when I was 25. I stupidly went into a tackle. I shouldn't have done it. And then I just shattered my collarbone. And that's when I realized, you know what? There are some bigger, stronger, faster kids out there who are better than me. So I think it's time to stop. So ever since, I watch it. I love the Six Nations. I love the World Cup. Saracens is my local club that I support. But I also just, from an activity perspective, just to keep myself going, I cycle a lot, run a lot, do the gym as best I can. I don't focus on bulking up. I just focus on just being fit and healthy. It helps me as well, especially with the pressures that come with the job. It keeps me away from the alcohol. So I don't touch alcohol at all. My addiction is sport, getting fit. Where I live is great because I'm surrounded by forests as well. So I just take my mountain bike and just disappear.
I used to play tennis a lot. I loved it. Would I still like to? Yes. Would I be able to? Probably not. I am quite sad that I didn't carry on with tennis. I've done more watching recently. I watched rugby, love rugby. My granddaughter plays rugby. My daughter played lacrosse. So I was on the touchline mostly watching them. I love sport. I used to go to Trent Bridge and actually I've been to Lords. My big thing is to go to Twickenham.
I grew up in a household where sports were not a priority, which as I get older, sports have become more of a priority because I want to stay fit and healthy. And my current sport of choice is Thai boxing. It's great fun. It keeps me switched on in the head and it keeps me active. And I've been fitter and stronger than I've been for probably 15, 20 years. I train and I meet someone that I have never met before and I punch them in the face and try and kick them. If I'd have found Muay Thai earlier and started training in a gym with the sorts of people that I train with now, then potentially I would have actually done some proper fights. That's not necessarily to say that would have been great for me, getting punched in the head a lot by someone who's better at the sport than me, but it would have been a real challenge. It would have been something that I think I would have looked back on and said, yeah, you did that.
I'm not a sports fanatic, but I do like when the World Cup plays or even the Rugby World Cup or anything related to a united nation. I enjoy the buzz and the atmosphere that it provides. So I will say I do watch the big events.
Honestly, I couldn't care less about sports, whether it was rugby, football, tennis. If it wasn't on, it wouldn't bother me.
Finally, what do you think our schools could do to better prepare our children for the world?
It is a fundamental lacking that we do not teach any form of politics to our children. I've been as guilty as this as my wife. We've both kind of grown up, and it's only in the last few years, relatively, the last few cycles of elections, where we've really paid more and more attention to what's going on. And I'm quite opinionated about it now. And whereas when I was a kid, I just took on what my parents thought. And now I have effectively broken away from what I was brought up with and actually decided for myself, which is, I think it's one of those subjects which is difficult because if you teach it, you need to teach it without bias. People need to make up their own mind. So it's very hard to teach politics without bias.
It's the teacher's place to educate our children. Parents have to take the bigger chunk of this. It's the parents' place to discipline, to give the basics or the foundation of how to be a human being, how to behave socially in a social environment, to be respectful to your elders, to be respectful to your next man, your next woman. That is down to the parents. The teachers are there to amplify that, but by educating them, if you put the two of them together, straight away, we've got the future leaders of tomorrow. I think we've lost that, unfortunately.
The curriculum is actually very outdated. Life has changed and the children are still learning a lot of information that probably isn't applicable later on in life. I personally feel a little bit more life skills in the sense of no one talks to you about how you open a bank account. I don't want to shape or make a load of accountants in the world, but it's just, it'd be nice to see kids understand what a mortgage is. Just to know the bare basics of life would be really good to see. I do have two boys. One of them is very computer orientated, and I think he's going to go down that route. But then I also have another boy who does struggle to sit in a classroom for 6 hours of the day. He'd rather be using a saw, drilling this. Not all 30 children in one class can fit the same criteria. Schools are too big, too underfunded, too much pressure to do certain stats to get good Ofsted ratings, where actually they need to focus more on the children. I am more for homeschooling, if I'm honest. So homeschooling, I think, is a good thing. My thoughts on it have changed a lot in the last 12 to 18 months, and I am considering it more and more.
What I would change in the curriculum to better prepare people for the world, I'd probably change how school is taught, as in the type of classroom that kids are taught in. The echo and the sound and reverberation inside of school isn't conducive to learning. Now, I'm going back 25 or 30 years since I was in school, but when I was at school, it was teacher at the front, rows of tables and chairs, and the kids sat at those tables and chairs. I would make it way more interactive, make it way more fun to be around. But I would also probably change the mandatory subjects and introduce things that help kids to become better citizens. Kids don't get enough education on tools that they can actually use. So we homeschool our children, and I use every opportunity I can to teach my children, whether we're out at a restaurant figuring out the tip, whether we're trying to add up what something's cost. Do you have enough money to pay for that? I feel like money management, finances are sorely missed within the schools. Being able to draw the best out of people, or, you know, things that are probably considered soft skills, but are much needed, but instead doing simultaneous equations. And actually, I can't think of a time I've used those things.
I graduated uni at 21, having taken no breaks. So I've only just recently come out of education, and not once have we been given like a life lessons class, just telling you about the world and adult responsibilities, which I would have really valued in sixth form when I was working out what I wanted to do with my life, whether to go to uni, whether to do an apprenticeship. And I think if we were given all of those options, maybe I would have had a bit more of an idea. That being said, I would like it to be sprinkled across all of the subjects that you're taking. Rather than having an entire class based on adult responsibilities, they'd need to do it in a creative way that kind of kept it engaging without being boring, without telling you exactly what to do. So they need to create a way that they can feed it into subjects without it being too overwhelming. If school could help you in a little way and encourage you in a little way to take some interest in it, that would be great.
I think the gearing up for university is the biggest failing of all of our school system. There are an awful lot of things that do not need you to go to university for. Or even if you want to get a university degree, you can now do it through the apprenticeship scheme. It's cheaper. You don't end up with loads of student loans. You earn money while you're doing it and you get experience. So when you've got your qualification, you're already in the workplace and you're ready to go. The second thing is life skills. We teach people maths and you've got trigonometry and all this sort of crap, which most people will never use in their life once they've left the school building. But understanding how a mortgage works, understanding how credit cards work, understanding how a loan works, these are all things that, regardless of where you are in life, you are going to have to understand. Learning how to cook for yourself, learning how to clean, learning how to maintain a house, just learning how to live. We still live in a class system, whether you think we do or not. And we stay in our own lanes. I think part of it is it's a self-perpetuating thing. If you aren't allowed to step outside of your class, then you potentially will then not let your children step outside their class. And part of the way of breaking that should be through schooling. One of my old bosses said to me when he sent his kid to school, they sat them down and said, this is our old alumni and this is where they've gone and this is what they've done. And you could do this. We will give you the tools so that you can be better, so that you can progress, so you can go places. And by allowing them to do that and seeing that, it gave them permission. It means that you're allowed to dream. You can then think, if they did it, I can do it. And you hear people often say, we're underrepresented. And the more I see it, the more I realize that's true. If you can't see it, how do you become it? So if the school says to you, this is where you can go, and people have done it before you, then in your head, you immediately think it's possible. But if no one has ever done it in your school, no one in your family has ever done it, it's really hard to be the first. And that's the same whether it is breaking class barriers, breaking race barriers, breaking through homophobia. If no one has ever done it in your family, no one has ever done it in your school, no one has ever done it in your life, how do you break that?
I think that there should be a greater emphasis on learning sort of basic life skills to prepare people for the adult world, to give people an understanding of the realities of money, because I think we're very slowly but surely losing touch with that.
So my boys went to school in Jersey and then the UK, a little bit in Monaco, and now in Luxembourg. School has never been set up to equip our young people for life afterwards. It's always about school targets to keep the respective government agencies happy. It's never, ever about the vocational piece. When I look at Europe, they have actually broken up the way students learn. So all those kids that are academically strong, they will push them for that. They will do their sixth form, they go to uni, and then they end up doing all the managerial roles. And then the kids that are not academically strong, they will still learn, the basic subjects, but will also have a vocation that they will learn. There is a huge shortage of all of these jobs, plumbing, mechanics, electrician. They also give kids the opportunity to spend 2-3 weeks a month in a real life work scenario, seeing how what they're learning is actually applied in the real work environment. Some have realized that school isn't set up for this and they need to rethink. Some haven't. And unfortunately, they're still shoving the same educational program down kids' throats. And that's why you find most of the kids, I was one of them, didn't enjoy school, because you really look at it and you think, what's the purpose of all of this?
This episode reminds us that while school might give us the subjects, life is what provides the context. If these accounts have told us anything, it's that the classroom was just the warm-up. You'll always be a student. Don't let your curiosity graduate just because you did. Because the moment we stop being students of life is the moment the world starts getting a whole lot smaller. Keep reading, keep questioning, and keep an open mind. Until next time, thanks for listening to Dog on a Piano. Please like and subscribe to be notified of upcoming episodes.